Hey folks, in this video we're going to be learning how to create a mailing list using Google Apps Script and a Google Spreadsheet. So for this example, we're going to keep it nice and simple, and we are going to create a field where people can enter in their emails, and then we will be writing a 3-file Google Apps Script using a custom function and an HTML file that will result in an emailing list that you can send out to a bunch of people. So the caveat with this is that it has to be under 50 emails. So as you can see, we successfully compiled our little newsletter here, and we have all the email addresses in our sheet. But the moment that we add a 51st email, we are no longer going to have a successful script. So if you're looking to have a mailing list that's over 50 people, I'll have a follow-up video for this. This video is just going to be focusing on a list of 50 people. So with that out of the way, let's get started with our video. So what you're going to need is just a Google spreadsheet. You could also use a Google form that pipes into a Google spreadsheet, but just for simplicity's sake, we only need one column. So what I'm going to do is just delete everything else in the spreadsheet, and then I'm going to create a column called mailing list. I'm going to bold the first cell, and then I am going to freeze the first row so that it scrolls like this. And to begin with, I'm just going to enter in my email, which is mattbrigidi.dev@gmail.com. You can send me any questions that you have there. I'm going to rename my workbook email mailing list under 50 emails. You can call yours whatever you want to. So with that out of the way, I am going to open up the extensions menu, and then I'm going to go to App Script. I'm going to change the title of my project to Email Mailing List. And then I'm going to add in 2 files. First, a script file, which is going to be called function data collector, and then an HTML file, which I'm just going to call email. You can call that whatever you want to. Email is not the best name in the world, but it'll get the job done. We're going to go to our data collector function file. We're going to begin by writing the word function, and then we're going to type data collector. And this function is going to have a single input, which will be the sheet ID. We're going to have curly brackets, and then we're going to begin by writing a comment that says access the workbook. We're going to declare a variable called WB, which stands for workbook, which is going to be set to spreadsheet app.get active spreadsheet. We're going to have an open parentheses and a semicolon. So what this is going to do is this is going to connect to the workbook that you just created. In the event that you want to use a workbook that is not associated with this script file, let's say you have another sheet somewhere else that has emails that you want to pull in, you can use spreadsheet app.open by ID, and then you can pass in the workbook ID as a string. Next, we're going to access all the sheets, and we're going to set that to a variable called sheets. And then we are going to say wb.getSheets, open parentheses. Then we're going to loop through the sheets. So we're going to use a for loop, and then I'm going to set my variables I, which stands for iterator, in sheets. Next, we are going to set a conditional to evaluate the sheet ID input. I'm going to say if sheets iterator dot get sheet ID open parentheses double equal sign sheet underscore ID. Add in curly brackets, hit enter, save the name to sheet name variable. So we're going to declare variable sheet capital N name is equal to sheets square bracket I dot get sheet name, hit down arrow once, down arrow twice, enter sign, go to the left, comment, collect, access the sheet. We're going to declare a variable to the name sheet, and then we're going to say wb.getSheet by name, and then we're going to pass in that sheet name variable that we just extracted from our for loop. So I'm going to go back and explain why we did what we did there. So effectively, we are leveraging the Spreadsheet app in order to access a Google Sheet. In this case, it's the email mailing list under 50 emails workbook. The Spreadsheet app has a native method called getSheetByName. The challenge with this method is that when the name of the sheet changes, your script will break because you will hard code in sheet 1 or emails or mailing list or something like that. And if you share this workbook with other people and they change that name from sheet 1 to mailing list, your script file will say sheet 1 and then it will break. In order to maintain continuity of your script regardless of the name of the sheet, we are leveraging the sheet ID in order to dynamically collect the sheet name. In order to identify the correct sheet name, we need to access all of the sheets and then loop through them one by one so that we can evaluate if the sheet ID is equal to the input sheet ID, so that then we can get the name of that value associated with this sheet ID. Now that we've accomplished that, we have a stable method of identifying the sheet with the data that we want to collect, so we can collect the data. And this will be the return statement of this function. So we'll be able to pass the word data collector and the sheet ID and then leverage this code in multiple circumstances if we need it. We won't in this script, but this is just best practice and something that I think will be valuable if you plan to script other files and environments. So in our return statement, we're going to say sheet.getRange. Now with getRange, you have the potential to enter 4 values, which is the starting row, the starting column, the number of rows to go, and the number of columns to go. So typically I'll put 1, 1, and then I'll leverage a dynamic evaluation of the data range to see how many rows of data I need to collect. Now this is a perfect example of where we will have an expanding and contrasting data environment where we may have emails added and then emails removed. So we need to have a solution that expands and contracts with it. Now, the challenge that we have, though, is that when we go back to this environment that I have here, we have mailing list in row 1. That is not an email address. So we need to skip row 1. So instead of starting at row 1, we're going to change it to be row 2. We're going to enter number 1 because that's the first column here. If your column is not number 1, then you can enter whatever column number it is. Next, we're going to enter the amount of rows that we want to go. And like I said, we don't know how many rows we're going to have. Like at the moment, we have 1 email address, but someday we'll have 2, and then 3, and then 4, and so on. And we want this function to be able to collect all of those values. So we're going to reference our sheet variable. And then we're going to use a dot, and then we're going to use get last row. So what get last row does is it returns the row number of the last value. So there's a bunch of blank cells here. That is not pulled in as part of get last row. The number 2 is returned when you say sheet.getLastRow because it's 1, 2. So the challenge there is that we're starting at row 2, column 1, and then we're going 1, 2. We don't want to go 1, 2. We just want to go 1. So what we're going to do is instead of leaving sheet.getLastRow as is, we're going to do sheet.getLastRow -1, so that when it returns 2, it will subtract 1 from it in order to get the number 1. Finally, we're going to do sheet.getLastColumn. This isn't necessary in this example because we only have one column of data, but in the event that you do have an environment, I want you to have this, or you have an environment where you need an expanding set of columns, I want you to have this logic in there. But you could also just leave it like this, where you just set 3 values, which is starting row, starting column, and then number of rows to go. After you've decided what's best for you, use dot get display values. Now, please note, when I enter in dot get display, you have value and values. If you use value, it will only return 1 result. So if you have more than 1 result, or you're expecting more than 1 result, make sure that you enter get display values with an open parentheses. And we're done. We now have a function that will enable us to dynamically collect data from a Google Sheet. Cool. So we're going to go back to our code file now, and we're going to create a function called main. We're not passing any arguments to it, so we can just have an empty parentheses there. We're going to have curly brackets, and then we are going to begin by collecting the email addresses. So we're going to use var, and we're going to say addresses. Actually, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's do var email list, and we are going to use data collector. And now we just have to pass in a sheet ID. So I want you to go back to your sheet with your mailing list, and you're going to go up to the URL, and you're going to collect the number value that comes after GID equals. That is the sheet ID. So we're going to copy that 0, and we're going to pass it into our function. So let's test this real quick just so that we can see how this works. So what's going to happen is we are going to hit save. We're going to wait for the function to be called main, and then we're going to run. We're going to have to provide permissions to Google Apps Script, which is standard. We're going to go to advanced, go to email mailing list, and then we're going to allow read, write, and access. Cool. So now you can see we're pulling in 1 email there. Perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to add some more emails to our list so that we can test this out. So I am going to remove this here, and then I'm going to paste in a bunch of values that I have on my clipboard, and I'm going to leave it at 50, and I am going to run it again. Cool, now you can see I have a bunch of emails here. You don't have to have these emails in here. I just kind of want you to see what happens when we have multiple emails. So you can see they're all in they're an array of arrays in here. If you want to, like, you can just create your email address, and then you can add a +1 at the end of it, and then do at whoever your server is. This will allow you to kind of like send multiple emails to the same address, or if you have more than 1 email address, you can enter that in there too. Cool. So now what we're going to do is connect to our HTML template. We don't really have to do this, but I just kind of want you to know how to do it. So, in order to send an HTML email, you need to have an email template, so an HTML file over here. So what we're going to do is call this email, and we are going to call the HTML service, and we are going to create template from file, and then we're going to use single quotes here, and we're going to write whatever the name of the HTML file is. So because mine is called email.html, I just write email over here. So you don't have to write HTML, you just have to write the name of it. Then we have to evaluate the content of our HTML file. So we'll do var email content, and we are going to say email.evaluate open parentheses dot get content. And we're going to have an open parentheses there. And now we're going to send our email. So we're going to say Gmail app dot send email. And here is where we are going to use our email list variable. So we don't have to do anything to it. We're just going to say email list and then comma, and we're going to set our subject line. So we're going to say, welcome to my mailing list. And then we're going to say this email uses HTML. This is like a little message just in case the HTML doesn't load, I believe. And then the final thing that we're going to put in there is the content of our email. So this is where we're going to write a dictionary, and we're going to call it HTML capital B body colon, and then we're going to reference our email content variable. Cool. So this part doesn't matter here, but I'm just going to write like a p tag and say this is my email closing p tag. This doesn't matter at all. This is just a kind of the content of an HTML email. If you want to learn how to send HTML emails, I have another video on it that I'll link up. So you'll say something else of like, here is my idea. Doesn't matter. None of this matters. You can do it if you want to, don't have to. Hit save, and then we are going to run. We're going to have to provide a permission so that it can send emails. We're going to allow access, and check it out. It worked. So we have a security alert. I'm going to clear that out. We're going to get another security alert probably. No, we didn't. Okay, perfect. So you can see welcome to my mailing list, and now you should be able to send it to multiple people. Cool. So as I mentioned before, the challenge with this is that if you attempt to send this to more than 51 people, so you can see in here I have 50 emails. I just added a 51st email. Doesn't work. Additionally, when you do send it to 50 people, it kind of looks really gnarly like this, where you just have a bunch of emails like this. That might be fine. But in follow-up emails, in follow-up videos, I am going to show you how to set up a logic system so that you can send it to more than 51 people. It won't be the same email, but it will enable you to just kind of have a list of people, and then you can send out an email in batches. So 50 people get one email, and then the next group of people get the same email, but they're on a different thread. Additionally, I'm also going to set up a video to show you how to do BCC, so that if you wanted to have, a list that isn't visible to the recipients, you can also do that as well. So I hope you all found this helpful. Please reach out in the comments. I hear from you all, and it's really wonderful. If you do have questions, feel free to email me. You saw my email address 50 times. And I hope I'll see you in the next one.